In the news, see how the psychedelic 60s influenced fashion for the spring 1991 season. Come to Florence and meet Emilio Pucci, the fashion legend who started a revolution with his far-out prints. And meet model Helena Christensen in her early career, following in Twinkie's footsteps. Marc Jacobs brought back 60s elegance for Perry Ellis. And a look back at Trevor Sorby's tips for hip hair. The swinging must-buy of 1991 and more ahead. The spring and summer collections of 1991 hailed the start of a new decade by looking back. The fashion pages popped with the power of the swinging 60s. This season, designers around the world took a dizzying trip in a time machine, combining the 60s revolution in search of 1990s style. It's a groovy trip into the past and a nostalgic walk down memory lane.
People are looking backwards to go forward. You always go back to some sort of base of reference. And, you know, designers love the nostalgia. Nostalgia gives them a sense of a jump start, a point of departure.
The 60s are so important this season that there are two sides of the 60s that have come down the runways. There's the calm, collected, elegant side of the 60s. If you think about Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's, or think about Babe Paley, the American socialite who was so well dressed she was elevated to the Fashion Hall of Fame in the 60s, you've got one side of the 60s look.
Everyone's been saying it's coming back to everything that went on in the 60s, but I think this is a totally New York look, wonderfully feminine.
It's derivative of the 60s, but it's consistently 90s, though. You know, it still looks very modern.
In the spring of 1991, there were two sides to modern 60s style. The mild side was epitomized by ladylike glamour. Bill Blass gave the simple chemise high-voltage color. And Byblos in Milan lets the sunshine in with day-glow brights. It's the softer side of the decade that Karl Lagerfeld at Chanel looks to. And Jackie O would be right at home in Oscar de la Renta's elegant looks. Valentino added a dash of pattern to his chic shifts. But in Milan, Crizia takes a walk on the wild side of the 60s, the other side of the decade that designers were crazy about.
The other side is wild and crazy, and it looks like the clothes that were worn on the TV show Laugh-In. Psychedelic, silly, kicky 60s kind of fashion that in those days originated in London. But this season, they come from every fashion capital.
There is the feeling, obviously, of the 60s, the op art period, the black and white graphic things.
A little bit of 60s, because we are all crazy about that. It reminds me a certain period of my youngness. I love the 60s. I love the 60s.
It's just, I wanted to be happy, upbeat. And that was the inspiration. I thought, you know, when things are down, you have to fight, and so you do something that's positive.
And nothing's more positively 60s than psychedelia. In the spring of 1991, printmaster Christian Lacroix took a trip with psychedelic style. And in New York, Norma Kamali got into the groove with patchwork bell-bottoms. Donna Karan's sleek style recalls the futuristic edge of André Courrèges. And in Paris, Bernard Paris gets hip with op art graphics. At night, Catherine Hamnett really go-goes with mini glitz. And nobody mirrored the decade better than London's Arabella Pollen. Swinging 60s style, a look back at the fashion classics from spring 1991. The 60s was the decade of fashion innovation. Mary Quant started the youthquake with the rise of the miniskirt. Jackie Kennedy and Babe Paley personified new elegance. But it was the Pucci look that reigned as the colorful status symbol throughout the vibrant 60s. Everyone who was anyone was seen in Pucci's vivid prints. In the spring of 1991, Pucci's classics emerged again as the brightest looks of that season.
The Pucci revival is one of those happy stories in fashion because there's been such a lot of black and dark and unified colours in the androgynous 80s that to see now the kind of splash of colour that came with Emilio Pucci when he first started in those rather drab post-war years is the same feeling now. He's being welcomed back with open arms because we want the colour and we want the life and we want the freshness of print.
Pucci, did such wonderful prints in the 60s and stuff, and in a way, they're classic because obviously people are wearing Pucci prints now, and they look just as right now as they did then. And they didn't change anything to sort of come back into fashion. Fashion came back to them.
Well, it was an enormous contribution in the 60s, and of course, with all the 60s resurgence and influences, it's wonderful.
I love original Pucci, and I think Pucci does it best.
The man behind the distinctive print was Marchese Emilio Pucci, who was truly a living legend. In Florence, Italy, a sumptuous Renaissance palace that has been in the family for centuries was home as well as the base of Pucci operations. In one of his last interviews before his death in 1993, Emilio Pucci reflected on his career.
I've always considered my work a very modest work, and to have it hailed as something terribly important is frightening. It means working harder than ever, not to disappoint people in what I do. Everything I did was studied or planned for movement, for sitting, for running, for dancing, for whatever you did. I imagined that things should be modern or contemporary. And then I imagined fabrics. This silk jersey here is an invention of mine, and these dresses have revolutionized, in a way, women's way of dressing.
Over a quarter of a century ago, Pucci introduced his revolutionary geometric prints to a captivated fashion world. In 1991, history repeated itself.
Well, Pucci, after the war, I remember going to Capri very shortly after that, and then on to Florence, and seeing what I thought at the time revolutionary, interesting to me, Pucci prints. We'd never seen anything quite like it, nor had we ever seen anybody sign their fabrics before.
I think he will be like a Chanel. It's a different thing, but that whole style will have a long, long, long life.
Throughout his life, Emilio Pucci lived dangerously. He was an Air Force pilot, Olympic skier, and even a member of the Italian Parliament. But it was his bold use of patterns and colors that really put him on the cutting edge.
I did color combinations which seemed outrageous, and they were good, and people felt happy or at ease with these colors. And in all the things I do, I just try and do something which is agreeable to the eye, the motion of the design. Furthermore, using color, something very strange happens. Color, depending on the shape of the object and its movement, has a different effect on the next color. And therefore, instead of being a blotch of yellow, blue, and so on, it all amalgamates again the bunch of flowers of all colors. And the thing looks agreeable instead of being disagreeable to wear.
I think his biggest contribution was color, not to be afraid. Very often high fashion women love to be very subdued and very safe. And I think he was the first one who really introduced bright and vivid colors into couture.
Pucci's brilliant designs are as popular as ever these days, mainly due to their daring appeal. His children lovingly carry on the Pucci legend.
What I really try to point out when we talk about my father's fashion, and it's lasting for 40 years and its continuity now through myself and my brother, I would definitely point out it's a family business. And when you do have family businesses, you normally, I wouldn't say don't have a choice, but it's part of your life, you know. And my father's kept his modern appeal, and it can be brought into the 90s. It's really how you wear Pucci today, and that's why I think it's an interesting product that can really go into the 90s very easily, because it applies to your lifestyle, to your taste as you wear it. It doesn't impose itself at all.
So you have to think in terms of women looking possibly beautiful as long as they live. I have had a customer coming here a short time ago. She limped because she had hurt her foot. She didn't know there was a lift. She walked up. And she said she was 86 years old, and she had bought a dress of mine, I think 35, 38 years ago, and she wanted another one. She still had a good figure and eyes with life. She was attractive with her white hair. And she tried several things, and she looked good, 86 years old. It's a great compliment to her and the little one, to the clothes I make.
The face of spring 1991 looks a lot like the face of 1965. The same makeup tricks that were important in the 60s came down the runways again.
To imagine this idea of redoing the 60s is only a symbol. Simply this. Nothing else. It's not an exact copy of the period, but one tries to give a new look to women.
And the makeup of the moment is a kind of inspiration of that. But if you really look at it nearly closely, the makeup is much better now, the products are much better, and the whole quality is in fact much more refined. It's just an idea. But I think it looks different on the girls of today, because the girls look very different. Huh?
But for special occasions, it's fun to paint on a 60s face and look like Jean Shrimpton or Baby Jane, Holzer or Twiggy.
In 1991, makeup recalled the 60s, but the looks for hair also captured mod 60s style. And no one does it better than London's Trevor Sorby salon, which was at the cutting edge of British hair trends in their day. They brought back the wig with whimsical style.
For one of the strongest looks, definitely, is always going back to the 60s, but this time we're trying to sort of twist the story on the sense of by using wigs, because we've realised that a lot of women have lots of accessories, but this year the wig seems to be the biggest accessory for the fashion market.
So the sophistication of wigs has really grown to a point that I question anyone if it's cut to the individual, the wig, no one could tell that it was a wig. So they've really come a long way. The youth of today sees it with a new set of eyes versus the people that saw it once before. And they're the people that say, oh no, I couldn't wear a wig because I remember it the first time around, it looked hideous, or whatever they may think. But anyone under 30 hasn't lived through that. And it's fun to wear wigs.
So then Trevor Sorby as a company, we decided to really go into this and show people exactly how to cut wigs and show them exactly what they can get out of it. I think the quality of the wig is exactly the same, but now we have more sort of oils we're putting through the wig, which is giving it that more natural feeling to it and giving it more reflection and more shine, which natural hair does. And I think really, even though you know it is a wig, I think the trick is to make her feel like she doesn't have a wig on.
What made it new in 1991 was to treat synthetic dime store wigs just like real hair, teasing, reshaping, and cutting them just like the real thing. Some customers wanted their wigs to look just like real hair, but the truly trendy love more obvious wig looks. Either way, it was a great way to change your hair as easily as you change your mind.
Probably now is the best time in my hairdressing career that I think there is more out there for women to choose from. What you need as much as anything is the enthusiasm to want to do it, and that's obviously something that has to come from within. I think in 1991 we're at a stage where hair, alongside fashion, is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. There is a fun element to the fashion. It's serious but not serious all at the same time, and I think that hair should be translated in that way. If you have the option to try a false piece, a hair piece, wigs, try it. I mean, at the end of the day, you can take it off or wash it out. If you don't want to go all the way and have it cut, then have fun with your hair, basically.
Hair to Dare from Trevor Sorby in the spring of 1991. She emerged at the beginning of the decade to launch a long, successful career. Meet Denmark's Helena Christensen. This Copenhagen-born beauty captured the hearts of designers around the world with her ever-changing looks and delicate doll-like beauty with a 60s twist for the 91 season.
Well, she's beautiful, you know, she has a wonderful mixture of being, you know, half Peruvian, half, I don't know what, or Brazilian, and I love the color, I mean, of her eyes. She's such a beautiful girl.
And I just think she's ravishingly beautiful. She has a face like a doll.
Well, I change a lot. I mean, my looks, I can look romantic sometimes, but other times it's a complete mess, you know. It's like, I don't really think about, you know, how I look. I just wake up and go out the way that, you know, I feel the day, the way I feel, you know, I dress differently if I'm in the mood for it. But I guess I look a bit, you know, because the combination of my mother's from Peru, so it's a Peruvian and Danish mixture, which is quite unusual, I guess. I like to do runways. It's just the period you do it, it's like all of them, you know, so at the end you're completely exhausted. But it's quite funny to wear different kind of clothes and show it, you know, to dress up in something you would never wear, you know. And so like 10 different outfits in about 45 minutes, that's really funny. But I like to do, you know, pictures as well, editorial stuff. Some of the photographers are just amazing, the way they can make you, the stories they build up around you, and the places you get to go and do editorial pictures. It's very mysterious sometimes. It's really an experience.
Helena quickly branched out from modeling to ventures like music videos, which portray her true romantic nature.
I like romantic things, you know, but I like melancholic things, like when it rains a lot and stuff. I'm really into that. So I like to read and listen to music, and I don't know if that's romantic, but and dress like romantic sometimes, yeah. I like poems and stuff. You know, I guess we're all romantic somehow.
Helena Christensen went on to reinvent herself over the years to stay on top. But in 1991, her romantic 60s mood was the look of the moment. Marc Jacobs has been known for his creative, whimsical approach to fashion, with an occasional wink at the past.
I personally don't like retro at all. I mean, anything with retro connotations. I think, again, it's more of an attitude. The attitude might be very 60s.
In the spring-summer 1991 season, Marc made news with his 60s-inspired looks for Perry Ellis. Though he was only a child during the 60s, Jacobs was impressed by the classic elegance of the era. But while the shapes may seem familiar to those who were there in the 60s, his new looks were strictly for the woman of the 90s.
I think that the mood of fashion right now is sort of gotten really very far away from what happened in the 70s and the 80s. 70s being that natural sort of look, and 80s being that sort of dress for success look. And I think that women want to be women.
In 1991, Jacobs took his design inspiration from the most important interior decorators of the 50s and 60s.
I think the brightest colors, or the most colorful passage, was the Sister Parish-inspired group, and I from what I know of her work and the photographs I've seen of the rooms that she's done, she's very bold with color. I saw pink and yellow chairs. I've seen prints, different prints on lampshades that are on the carpets, etc. And that was what turned me on, and that's what excited me, because there's something so lively. And then the navy and white I always think is so crisp and handsome, and I think that sort of symbolized what Billy Baldwin did with his interiors. And the white and beige and aquas were very cool and optimistic and fresh, and that to me was very Elsie de Wolfe. So that explains the whole inspiration.
The inspiration may be 60s, but Jacobs interpreted it in 1991 with a thoroughly modern attitude towards fashion.
And I think that fashion is really a heightened version of what reality is. So, you know, the prints have to be that much more exciting, and the colors have to be that brighter, and the shapes may be that much tighter or looser. It's an exaggeration, you know, it's not real.
Though the Perry Ellis label has gone through numerous changes, at the time, Jacob retained its trademark wit and charm.
You know, now with, like I said, life being so grim, or the economy, or whatever it is that, you know, happens, fashion has to become an escape again. And for women, I think that that will symbolize really an appreciation for the time that they put into making the world a little bit more beautiful.
And look back at Marc Jacobs for Perry Ellis, 1991. Do you remember what the must-buy item was in the spring of 1991? Today's future is in yesterday's plastics, shining on long into the 90s. A swinging trip back to the 60s looks for 1991 from Fashion Classics.